To me, customer success is the DNA of a company, right? Driving customer-centric growth is a strategy. When we make it just a function, you lose the efficacy and impact of it. So I start with, if you were a startup funder, I would say, how do you make customer-centric growth your strategy? If that is your strategy, then think about where do you need to be in order to deliver most value to your customers.
Welcome to Speaking C-Suite, where today's CFOs have evolved from financial gatekeepers to strategic force multipliers, and they're driving growth across the entire organization. I'm David Hemenway. I'm the host of the Angel Nest podcast, and I'm joined by Johnnie Walker from Rooled, outsourced CFO and accounting services. Rooled are the startup finance experts, and they are the driving force behind this series. Great to be back with you, Johnnie.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks, David.
Today, we're exploring how modern chief customer officers are transforming from customer service officers to customer growth officers. They're driving efficient growth through retention and expansion. We'll discuss how post-sales organizations partner with CFOs to maximize revenue, why technical expertise matters in complex product environments, and how data-driven customer success creates measurable financial impact. Joining us is Harini Gokul. She's the Chief Customer Officer at Entrust. Harini is a technology leader accelerating innovation and transformation for customers, and they range from Fortune 500 enterprises all the way to startups. Her technical expertise and engineering acumen and business leadership in AI, cybersecurity, and cloud, coupled with her customer-first mindset and global go-to-market expertise, make her a thought leader and a trusted advisor to business leaders everywhere. Harini, thanks so much for joining us today from Seattle. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It is great to be here, Johnnie and David, and I look forward to this conversation.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Thank you, Harini, as well. And just before we get started, I wanted to say another big shout out to our sponsors. That is Aleph, Tabs, and Rooled. All three are really revolutionizing finance in the tech landscape. We really appreciate their support. They made Speaking C-Suite happen. So we're very grateful to them. And look forward to the conversation here.
Great. Harini, I'm really curious about this whole concept of customer service officer to customer growth officer. It's fascinating, and I'm wondering, how does this really change the customer success relationship with the CFO?
I love that question. It's something I have been in pursuit of for the past 2 decades, and feel very lucky and fortunate to have been part of the transformation and leading the transformation from customer service to customer growth. And like most things, it starts with customers, and it starts with the world we live in. If you think about the evolution of business models and revenue models in the past, just even 10 years, right? Previously, many of us started our careers in an environment where you had a large on-premise server farm, a data center, very much rooted in perpetuity. Right? So I would knock on your door, sell you some servers and some licenses to go with it, come back in 3 years, you still need those servers and licenses, you would sign me a check and off we would go, right? In which case, the only time you needed customer service was when things were down, something needed help and you needed maintenance and you needed support and service of that. But then came the cloud, and that was the big disruption, right? What happened with the cloud is barriers to entry went down, which meant more of us could be in business. More of us needed less infrastructure to be in business. We had access to more agile, flexible infrastructure models, right? So as an example, engineers swiping on AWS to just buy storage off the cloud and fire up an instance. What that meant was customers had more choices. When customers have more choices, then they're able to evaluate more competitively what option is better for them, which in turn meant we as solution providers had to stay closer to customers to truly understand the value we were providing to them. That was the pivot when the conversation moved from you buy something from me, you use it, you pay me for it, to we are in a partnership together where I create a solution that you find value in. And if you don't find value with me, you will actually move to somebody else, right? So an increased competitive environment, a change in business model, and a move to the subscription world is what started changing the dialogue and the conversation from service to growth to value, right? And to me, value is what drives growth, so it changed it to value. And then a consumption world where today I do not have to even pay you a minimum in order to run your service, right? And which in turn means I'm always, as a customer, looking for the best value that is out there. Who can help me be most competitive and provide the most value to my customers? And so then the focus on value gets dialed up even more. Where to a point where right now I look at solution providers who offer me outcome-based pricing, where I will pay them based on the outcomes they deliver for me. So that is the journey we are on. What makes this journey go faster right now is the macroeconomic conditions, right? Think about cost of money. Money today is more expensive than it was even 2 years ago. Also, all the innovation we've seen with AI, which means people are more agile. There is more innovation today than it's ever before, and it's going faster. So at one point, you see a pressure on innovation. A second point, you see the economic pressure on cost of capital. And that, again, comes back to the key word of the day, value. Customers' focus on value has become existential. And that is what drives the need for us to be close to customers today, make sure that we're solving their problems, make sure we have a seat at the table to solve even bigger problems. All of that makes this role a growth lever.
Well, so Harini, just and obviously part of the scope here as we talk about customer success or this marketplace is companies that grow from seed stage and sort of product ideation, where in that growth and you have seed funded companies, Series A funded companies, they're establishing that first product, they're getting market traction, etc. How do you think about that, the actual instance of, let's say, the birth of a customer success function? Like, how does that kind of, what ways do you think that needs to work?
I love that. I answer that question one-on-one for so many startups on a regular basis, so I'm glad to do it at scale here. To me, customer success is the DNA of a company, right? Driving customer-centric growth is a strategy. When we make it just a function, you lose the efficacy and impact of it. So I start with, if you were a startup funder, I would say, how do you make customer-centric growth your strategy? If that is your strategy, then think about where do you need to be in order to deliver most value to your customers? When you're early on, seed, when you're looking for product market fit, what do you need from your customers? You need instant, agile cycles of feedback, right? And so I highly advocate for the customer success type function to be seated within engineering, within the builders. You should forward deploy builders with your design partners to be able to have access to that feedback, be agile in making the changes. As you scale, as you have more partners and you have more recurring revenue and customers out there, the conversation shifts to how do we maintain intimacy with our customers? How do I get to know my customer in a depth that helps me understand not only just their priorities, but their customers' priorities? How do I understand what good looks like for them in 1 to 3 years, and then we work backwards to solve it for you? When you're at that stage of maturity, and in this case it's happening earlier, so sort of B stages, right? Normally it's B or C, depending on the segment you're in and the growth velocity you're seeing, then customer success generally moves into a go-to-market space where it sits with marketing, it sits with sales. Often it reports to sales to help you go faster, and it reports to a chief revenue officer. And as you mature that even more, and then you can have a more programmatic framework to manage your customer portfolio, where you think about how do I secure my customers? How do I grow my customers? How do I create advocates? Because as you scale, the best way to acquire a customer is with an existing customer, right? If I need to buy a solution, yes, I'll look at analyst reports, but I'm going to ask a fellow CCO, how do you buy this? Who do you buy it from and why? So creating advocates as you scale becomes mission critical. And so then you need a function, a post-sales function, a separate function that partners with our friends in sales, our friends in marketing, product engineering, all of the above, to then have a very robust programmatic way to manage life cycle of the customer, make sure you secure them, make sure you understand use cases to grow them, and most importantly, create advocates that will go to bat for you, that will evangelize you in your absence.
It's funny, the way that you describe it here, you make it sound so obvious. Like the framework and the importance of having customer success from the very earliest stages of that product development is kind of, do you think that the market and industry is only starting to really realize the power of this philosophy? Or, yeah, because it doesn't seem like it's really as widespread a mandate, I think, as you've laid out.
It's a great question, and I believe this is still nascent and organic and growing. And given where we are with economics, given where we are with the pace of agility and the maturity, the more startups are maturing and growing faster than ever before, and the need to drive efficient growth. A few years ago, efficient growth was not always a table stakes. But now driving growth efficiently becomes more important. And so by default, this role that helps you drive efficient growth then becomes more important, this role or function. And what I will say is I see more and more companies earlier in their stage asking the right question. What do my customers care about? What problem am I solving? How do I continue to solve it better than anybody else? How do I solve bigger problems? So they're asking the right questions. Now they need to put in place the right frameworks and mechanisms and org structures to make sure that they can sustainably and scalably answer those questions.
One other question, just from a different perspective, churn. Is it ideal to have no churn, or is some level of churn actually desirable because it shows that you've reached like an optimum product sort of, or you're further optimizing the product in terms of profitability? How do you think about churn?
I have a lot of thoughts on churn, and churn is not one thing, right? Churn is a few things. I think of churn as when a logo churns. There's also contraction on customers. And then there is sort of these acts of nature that happen, like, when you have mergers and acquisitions and end of life of products. So there's multiple things to that as you unpack it. But my philosophy is this. It serves the customer and us well. It serves us the best when we have the right match between our solution portfolio and customer problem and customer use case. And I welcome churn when it is an ICP, when it is an ideal customer profile that is not in alignment with my solution portfolio. And I don't know if this is a controversial statement to make, but sometimes early on when you're trying to find the right fit of customer, you end up selling to people that you shouldn't be selling to, right? So when you have that, identifying that problem early and parting ways respectfully is to me churn that I will take all day long, right? Because it helps your reputation, it helps you focus your very precious dollars on what is more important. The customer truly has an opportunity to get their problem solved. The other piece where, but in no other conditions is churn excusable, right? Churn means that we've not delivered on a customer's product ambition in the way it should have been delivered. We've not understood their use case in the way we should understand it, and we don't have the relationship and the sentiment to have anticipated it the way we should have anticipated it. So it's a breakdown on multiple fronts, and I have very little patience for churn that is controllable.
Harini, I'm curious about your formula of growth equals retention plus expansion. How do you help CFOs understand the financial impact of different customer success investments?
Right. I love this conversation. So I grew up, my mom's a physics teacher and my dad's an engineer. So I sort of grew up predestined to be living with numbers, and it so happens that I like it. So this is a match made in heaven. I often joke that I'm a closet CFO and with the external CCO hat. I think so. I think it is what is needed for this business as we think about driving growth, as we think about driving outcomes versus just activities. To your question, right? Think about the role of a CFO. I'm a CCO, so I always think about if CFO is my customer, what is his, her, or their responsibilities? What are they held accountable for? So my job is to make sure that I do my bit to, one, de-risk revenue for my CFO and help my company meet their goals in the most efficient way possible. I am very frugal in all things, both with how I spend my time, but also how we invest to make sure we get to outcomes, right? And it's the same sort of thesis that works at home and work. But with my CFO, let's say you have $1 billion, right, to go get. You're a $1 billion company, and I have an install base that generates, let's say, 400 million out of that $1 billion, right? Just hypothetical numbers. So my accountability to my CFO is I am going to get you some percent, 90% plus, of that 400 million ACV that is recurring revenue for us. That is what translates into a GRR target. What does that do? I have just de-risked up to 350 million out of a $1 billion P&L, which then means my CFO and the larger team and my CEO and our product engineering, everybody can then focus on how do I go get the other $550 million that I need to go get, right? And to me, that is the most valuable part of my role internally, how I show up for my first team, my team of SLT peers, by guaranteeing this revenue. And not only do we deliver on this recurring revenue we've committed to, but also every renewal that's part of it has to expand. Renewal is never a zero-sum game. It's never a you renewed or not. You have to renew and you have to grow on top of it, either by sort of measures like business hygiene measures, like putting a price uplift in, like 5% price uplift, or you buy more of what you already have, which we call an upsell. So at a minimum, a renewal gives me some pass-through sort of price increase inflationary revenue, and it gives me an upsell. So you've committed to a number, you deliver that number plus this revenue, and then you create the base for your friends in sales to go expand even more and drive cross-sell, which is selling more of the portfolio or selling more across lines of businesses. This is the reason your CFO should talk to you or want to talk to you, because you've just helped him or her or them de-risk a significant part of what they have to go get, and you've done it in a way that's cheaper and more efficient than putting other go-to-market resources to work.
Well, one question just leading off that, Harini, where in your frameworks of thinking about the customer success is there this monitoring of actual customer utilization of the platform? So it's not, because there's, I think what happens a lot of the time is that companies don't think about the fact that customers not actually using the environment that they've sold to them. And so that increased it. So how do you monitor that? What kind of metrics, or how do you think of like finding those problem situations and then reacting to them? What's that kind of reactive framework or proactive framework there look like for you?
I love that question. You know, I believe there's a term called shelfware that was in the 90s that is a result of more features than what people could use or what customers could use. And today the tell is very clear, right? If you think about businesses that are subscription, but also consumption businesses, I have telemetry, real-time telemetry that tells me how much my customer is using this product. Even better, if I lens back, I have enough portfolio telemetry that tells me not only what features are getting adopted, what features are not getting adopted, but also pattern matching. Are there geos that behave a certain way? Maybe there's a regulation, a financial regulation that's enabling some geos to use this more or less. So we have real-time intelligence and telemetry that inform my view of the health of the portfolio and the adoption of the portfolio. And that is my leading indicator number one. Adoption, in my perspective, customer usage and adoption and timely adoption is the main driver for customers to be retained, but also to use and find more value and grow with our portfolio. So job one for us is making sure that customer adoption is, one, frictionless, that's just table stakes, but it's also done in a time and a manner that the customers find accrues up to their priorities. right? You've heard the term forward deployed engineer a lot. That is all in reaction to we want customers to find value from what they've bought early enough, adopt it, and use a lot of it as early as possible. So I will proactively invest in resourcing to onboard my customers, to start making sure the meter starts to tick, and they find usage, because the more they find usage, the more my revenue meter and flywheel is ticking. But also, more importantly, it tells me the customer finds value in the solution, and I can find ways to then expand them and grow that business.
Yep, understood. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Harini, you mentioned your technical background. You have technical depth that a lot of folks in your position don't have. Curious, does that affect outcomes in complex product environments and the way that you look at that? Does it change your approach at all?
I have found it helpful. So to me, as this role and the function has evolved from a service to a growth role, I believe we need to invest in our talent to make sure that they are credible in having the conversations our customers need, right? The role previously used to be very much of a relationship focused. You shake hands and you take people out to nice dinners. That will no longer make the cut, right? I've always worked in deeply unsexy picks and shovels businesses, infrastructure, cybersecurity. My customers are directors of infrastructure, CISOs, deeply technical. For me to be able to cater to my customer, I need to be able to carry a technical conversation. It doesn't mean I just sit in technology, but I need to bridge my technical capability and my understanding of their technical environment with my business expertise and my strategic insight, and be able to converge and bring it all together. That convergence, I believe, is of huge value and has made a difference to both customer relationships and customer outcomes. I do not think there is a customer out there who has patience to spend their time having a conversation that doesn't deliver value to them. So things like just showing up for QBRs and orchestrating things is of limited value. I don't see our customer success roles as orchestrators. I see them as owners. I see them driving. I see them leading. And for them to do all of that, they need to have the technical capability so they can walk the talk.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm curious, how do you make the case for investing in the kind of technical infrastructure that you need in order to really increase customer success and grow the customer base? That can be a challenge sometimes, right?
So for me, investment, it's a business case, right? A lot of things are very numbers driven, but I'll give a two-pronged answer to this, right? We have tools that we use that help us understand the products and the product teams that our customers most care about, as an example, right? If I am going to implement and deploy those things, then we work with our friends in engineering to make sure that we have lab space, we have test spaces where we are able to test these solutions before we go to the customer and implement and deploy. And the reason we do that goes back to the numbers, right? If you want to maintain a certain retention rate and a growth rate, and we know that onboarding and implementation is key, then you extend that to say X dollars will come, or that you spend on the lab will be recouped because you're keeping the customer, they're doing more with you, which is Y dollars, and you're growing with them, which is Z dollars. So to me, at the end of the day, this is a formula. You invest $1 in lab, you get Y dollars, X some multiple of it, 10X multiple of it at the other end because of retention and growth. Your business case is done.
How do you, just back to the CFO, and I think building off this topic here, what are the ways in which, when the CFO is looking at the forecast for the company at a high level and thinking about these different sources of revenue, as you've covered already, with the recurring and obviously the new, et cetera, and the upsell opportunities, what kind of, how do you approach that planning conversation with the CFO? And do you break it down into like 3 or 4 main categories? Like how do you make this thing sort of more bite-sized chunks?
I love this question because this is my happy place. The P&L puzzle piece. So think of it's a 3-levered matrix, so to speak. So I'll sort of call out the 3 levers. The first lever is our North Star, the growth ambition where we want to be. right? And in order to get there, we have an ambition. In order to get there, I will start with two numbers. I start with all up ACV, which is my all up recurring revenue. And then a portion of that recurring revenue renews every year. So the second metric for that is ATR. So ACV is my large, I have 400 million renewing as recurring revenue. If customers are on some sort of multi-year deals, right? Every 2 years, every 4 years, then maybe 100 million renews every year. That becomes the opportunity to go after. And I think that's super important. If you just stay at the ACV level, you've really missed the opportunity for a year. So we start with ACV, then click down to ATR and say, of the 100 million, what do we want to keep, and do a set of analysis on that. And that is by customer, by product, by segment. Where do we have customers at risk? Where do we see healthy customers that are going to renew? Where do we see healthy customers that are going to renew and do more with us? So I do that classification. The second way to look at it is by product portfolio. For every product, we assign a retention and a growth number. And that is then evaluated and validated and calibrated depending on the investment in the product. And this is what I mean by that. Let's say I have a product with a large install base, and I've traditionally had high retention, some growth for it. But customers have been asking for 3 features. If my Chief Product Officer decides that we are going to invest in it, then I know those features are going to be met and my GRR and NRR will go up. If I know those features are not being met, then my GRR or NRR will not go up, and we have to accommodate for that. So that's the second thing we do. The second thing we do is by product portfolio. Depending on where we decide to invest, depending on what we decide to sustain or maintain or harvest, you will have to tailor your GRR and NRR accordingly. The third lens I would bring, so you have an ACV and you have a GRR, NRR lens, and then you put that together, and then you have these 5 inputs, right? You start with starting ACV. You say of the ATR, what will renew with upsell? So that's the upsell number. Second, what will renew with cross-sell? So that's my cross-sell number that we work together with sales. Then we say, what do we anticipate will churn based on our understanding of the portfolio? And what do we think will contract? As an example, the federal workforce, right? We know from everything we've heard that the federal workforce is going to contract, so I have to bake that into my P&L for next year. That, and then you add sales owns net new, you add that to it, and these 5 inputs will then tell you the shape of revenue for next year.
Right, yeah. But fantastic. You lay it out so clearly that I think all we've got to do is the transcript and we can publish the book.
And it sounds so easy when Harini says it.
Yeah,
right?
very much so.
So you've scaled a lot of customer service organizations into very big businesses and operations. What's the playbook for figuring out the optimal number of employees, and how is AI affecting that now?
I love that question. These are great questions. So to me, I think about my workforce in 3 ways. I have our colleagues, like a human-first approach. I have partners I rely on, right? Every company, whether it was Microsoft or where I am right now, partners are key to go to market. And I want to make sure I'm supportive of the channel ecosystem. So that's my second lever I want to pull when I think about customer engagement. And the third one is, of course, AI. I've not had one conversation the past 18 months that hasn't included AI. And the way I think about it is AI is means to an end. It helps my partners, it helps my customers, and most importantly, it helps my workforce do their highest, best job. So we think about AI in 3 maturity stages. With my team and with my leaders, we say, where can AI help augment our workflows today to deliver more value at a lower cost to serve? Onboarding as an example, if that is the most important, biggest bang for the buck workflow, how do I bake in AI to help me do more for my customers in a more efficient way? So that's an example of where we build in AI to augment existing functions and workflows and processes and help our people do their best job. The second thing where we use AI is to anticipate. Because we want to be efficient, we don't have eyes on all of our portfolio, right? We have eyes on some part of our portfolio, but we have a risk and a health model that tells me if signals A, B, and C get met, then I need help with that customer. And AI helps me do that. It creates a proactive health and risk model that helps me drive predictive actions, proactive actions for a set of customers that I don't have eyes to. And that helps me be more efficient. That's the second piece. Augment is how do I help my people do their best, highest job? Second is how do I anticipate where there is risk or opportunity and proactively go after it with AI in an efficient way? And the third piece is, could we think about AI owning autonomous outcomes? And I think that maturity is a while away for us, but that will be the third way in which we deliver more efficiency in customer engagement.
Do you think there's a cultural evolution yet to happen in people's sort of acceptance of AI? Because I think it feels that many of the, let's say, chatbots that we interact with when we bought like a license to something, like you get the sense that really it's just an AI. In fact, even a lot of the time it just tells you it's AI driven. And so, and I think, how do you think the sort of public acceptance of AI, knowing that you're not actually talking to a person, but it's representing as if you're talking to a person, how does that sort of play a part in your mind in staying successful in customer success?
Another great question. And like in most things, I start with my customers, right? My customer engagement is driven by what my customers expect from me. I have several customers who have no desire to get on the phone with me. They want to self-serve, just get their questions answered, just move on, right? And I have to meet them where they are. So using all the technology at my disposal, AI and others, to self-serve and serve up content for my customers so that they can get what they need in an agile way is important. And I have other customers who prefer to spend time with us, who want face-to-face conversations with us, and we will absolutely meet them where they are and make sure we do that. And as we do that, we'll use AI to think about how we can do it more efficiently, right? AI does a better job research than I would going to 5 different tabs. So before going to a customer conversation, I will use my existing tools to be more prepared so I can deliver more value to the customer. So that is one way to think about it. To the cultural piece, to me, this is probably the most important question right now. If we think about AI as a silver bullet, you put something to go, like the bot example you mentioned, let it run. I guarantee you're not going to have the results you want, right? Even agents need training and constant evergreen training in order to stay relevant and deliver value to the customers, right? So where we have to start with is first acknowledge the anxiety. There is anxiety today among so many of us. How is this AI going to change my world, right? People are asking, how is my job going to change? And one response is, we are now equipping you to deliver your highest, best value, because AI is going to do all of these administrative things that were actually distracting you from doing your job. So we're going to help you be more productive, but be more impactful with customer. And for that, you have to learn how to use AI. And so we invest in AI upskilling with my teams. We just did a summit 2 weeks ago where we had learning labs and experimentation and prompt engineering experiments with our teams, so everybody could sort of wallow in AI, understand what this is. And the more you play with it, the more you build with it, you demystify it. You understand that this is a set of tools that is going to help you do more for your customers and partners. And it's a journey, right? It's not once and done. You have to keep, things are moving so fast from a technology perspective. You have to keep investing. You have to help sort of keep understanding if this is doing what it's doing for you, and course correct as needed.
Harini Gokul, Chief Customer Officer at Entrust. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I loved anytime you want to talk numbers and data and finance, I'm here for you.
Wonderful. Harini, thank you so much. Really happy holidays too.
Thank
Bye
you.
now. Bye. Bye.
This has been Speaking C-Suite, exploring how finance leaders can become true strategic partners and drive growth across their companies. Check us out on YouTube and all the major podcast platforms. I'm David Hemenway, founder of the Angel Nest podcast, joined by my podcast partner, Johnnie Walker from Rooled, outsourced CFO and accounting services. Another great episode, Johnnie. Thank you.
Another terrific one. Really looking forward to this. Thank you.
All right. And if you'd like to hear some more, we've done a lot of episodes with Johnnie at theangelnest.com, and you can also learn more about what he does every day at Rooled.com. Thanks for tuning in. So long until next time.